and we'll go right into discussion items. There are 3 items for discussion this evening: a Town Council roundtable, Morrisville redistricting post-2020 census, and a health insurance update plan design discussion. Martha Page, Town Manager, will assist in facilitating our first discussion. Town Manager Page.
Thank you, Mayor. At the February 8th council meeting, we talked about the structure of our work session, and Councilmember Garamella brought up a roundtable item he wished to have discussed. So I will actually turn it over to him to share that information with Town Council.
Thanks, Martha and Mayor. The hot-pressing topic is about the cap on Parkside Elementary. So I want to basically keep it very brief. The idea is to let staff draft a letter, with the points that we come out as a consensus, because I feel Parkside Elementary, what are the options? If the cap is put in, can we have additional trailers? And there's a new land for middle school. Can some of the land be used to place any of the additional trailers there, or the proximity of the closest schools, because Adams is pretty far, and other options I can see is like the proximity is either explore Morrisville Elementary, then Carpenter, and also like a couple of other schools, which are having year-round, and there's a little bit of capacity. Just putting Adams School Elementary is far, so that's pretty much the essence. I'm happy to get like a good points so that Martha and the staff can draft a letter, and basically we'll see and send it over to the school board.
Okay, so I heard asking Wake County School Board whether or not it's possible to have additional trailers in addition to what they're planning, and if there's the possibility of having more proximate schools as the overflow schools. And we all know that schools are really important to all of our residents. Do any other council members have any other points that they would like to have made in the letter from staff, assuming that we're going to go forward and put that together?
This meeting is being recorded and/or transcribed.
Thank goodness. Okay, I'd like to recognize Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, please.
So I just want to echo Councilmember Garamella's points about a letter, absolutely in agreement, and about asking for some additional options to be considered. I too think Adams Elementary is too far away for our residents. And so you all know I've already talked to our school board representative, Chris Haggerty, about this, and because I did think Adams was just way too far for the folks in the very northwest part of Morrisville to have to go for an overflow school. And so he's already heard my personal concerns, but I do think a letter from council asking for some additional consideration, especially trailers. He and I spoke about that too, but I think there are schools across the county that receive trailers, and I'd like to have Parkside to understand why trailers were not thought of there as well. So I'm in support of drafting some type of letter from council.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Scroggins Johnson, please.
I'm in support of a letter. I believe that we should request closer year-round schools. Morrisville Elementary, Carpenter Elementary, and other schools that are closer because of the hardship on the parents, and it just seems way too far. Also, there's a little bit of dependency on the new middle school. We have students that are supposed to be going to the new high school, so there might be some consideration for what they're doing with that land there, but I do think the elementary school needs to be much closer. So, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Rabati, please, followed by Councilmember Rao.
So I just want to point out that these are, in fact, all of the arguments that we made when Parkside opened, and that they were not considered persuasive by the school board. And the alternate for Parkside at that time was going to be Peace Elementary, which was 40 minutes away. And we talked about proximate schools. We talked about, we talked about the hardships to the parents. We talked about all of these things, and it was not persuasive. So I think that I think that we're going to have to up our game here, and we all know what needs to happen, but I think that there's not the appetite on the school board to do it, which is to pick everybody up and move them one school west. I mean, that's going to be the answer, but I'm fine with writing a letter. Obviously, I think we should get the closest schools possible, and that, that our kids should go to school, Morrisville kids should go to Morrisville schools, and, I think we're all in agreement on that, but I think we're at the mercy of a school board that's not necessarily making the tough choices.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Rao.
I want to thank Councilmember Garamella for bringing this issue up. And what I would say is that I think a letter is fine, and I think, sort of drafting it quickly, getting all those points in. I do think it's very important, for the Planning and Zoning Board to, of course, they're aware of these issues, but as we look at planning and future developments, how is this going to factor into that? So maybe we can consider them, interacting with the school board as well. So that might be something that, we can suggest, just because I think that, it's really concerning that, people would have to drive so far, and Adams is just way too far. So whether we can make those connections would be great. And, hopefully this letter will be the first step in the right direction.
Okay. I'll recognize Councilmember Fender, then I'd like to react to some that Councilmember Rao said. Councilmember Fender?
Yes, I agree. We should write a letter and explore other options for Parkside Elementary, possibly adding the trailers, and also suggesting a different backup school that is closer. That being said, writing a letter is a reactive approach rather than being proactive, and I'm really glad my fellow council members are finally concerned about CAP schools. We need to remember this the next time we have a vote in front of us for conditional zoning. This is, what I said during the meeting, looking at Zero Slater Road, is where are these kids supposed to go to school? Granted, that apartment complex is not in the district for Parkside Elementary, but we can't act all surprised that Parkside Elementary is capped when we created the problem. We need, I hope Councilmember Rao will indeed consider, schools when Planning and Zoning Board gives us their recommendation, and when we decide whether to approve or disapprove a rezoning request. Granted, we want to do something about this immediate problem, but we need to be thinking more long term for future. This is going to come up again. And so we need to be more proactive rather than being reactive. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. I also support the drafting of letter with those 2 points, so I think we have full consensus on that, so thank you very much for bringing that forward. Sort of an aside, but sort of related, that I don't think we want to go down the rat hole right now, is Apex has something that comes from WCPSS every time they have a zoning decision before them. And it's been suggested that perhaps we request that same information going forward to be more proactive, for example. And I just want to clarify a little bit about whether or not we as a group would be interested in having P&Z interacting with the Wake County School Board as well as MPAC. Or was that your intention, Councilmember Rao, to have those two groups and us working with Wake County Public Schools, or how would you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, to respond to Councilmember Fimber's comment, I mean, I think that the plans always evolve and change, and so, I think we have to move forward. We can't look back, and I think that, definitely, I think this changes. Hopefully, we can stick to the land use plan that we adopted, because I think part of the problem is so many people are coming in for rezoning. So with that being said, I think it's important for the Planning and Zoning Board to have interactions with the school board as well. So maybe joint meetings, which I think can get everybody on the same page. Because I think we also need to be realistic for those listening online tonight that, we don't control. We can control, we cannot control the school board and the decisions that they make. We can influence them, but we don't have the ability to build new schools or create new schools. So, I think we also have to be realistic to the expectations we put out to the public that, if we stop all development, it can, sometimes what we do will impact Cary. I mean, if we approve an apartment complex, it might not immediately, impact Morrisville, but it's a regional issue as well. So I don't want people in Morrisville thinking that it's only a Morrisville council issue, because Cary approves development as well. And I think that, in addition to P&Z, we need to be talking with Cary as well to make sure that we're approaching this regionally with the cities around us. I think we're being thrown in uncertain, it's not fair just to say, well, all these schools are being overcrowded because of Morrisville. That's not true. Cary's making decisions and those kids are coming here. So I just think we need to make sure. That's why I think we need to all be working together so we can come up with a solution so this doesn't keep happening.
Okay, regional collaboration, that's what we're searching for. So I'll throw it back to Councilmember Garamella. It sounds like we're supportive of your idea. Do you have anything to close us out on this item?
No, I think, thank you, because this is, it does affect, and so Martha, like if you can, work towards that and quickly turn it over to the school board.
So staff's reaction to what you've
Yes,
just heard?
Erin is also online, and she is our staff support for MPAC. I'd like to, if I could, make a comment about PZB interacting with the school board. And just a reminder that council's charge to MPAC is to bring it to council what you want to advocate for. And I believe MPAC has talked about engaging with PZB, but I'd caution you on sending another body to advocate at the school board that you have not provided that direction to. So just as a part of their work plan, I think that might need to be discussed a little bit more with all of the groups before you make recommendations that way.
Okay, but staff is okay drafting a letter?
Erin and I can work on that through this week. Typically, our approach has been, and Erin, please chime in if you have anything to add, but we would draft a letter, probably run it by Councilmember Garamella first to make sure we've caught his flavor, but then allow council to see it before we would send an official letter. But that's been done pretty quickly in the past.
Okay, that sounds great.
Erin, any comments you wish to add?
Yes, thank you, Martha, and thank you, Mayor and council members. I'll add just a couple of comments. Martha and I talked about this briefly this afternoon. MPAC did discuss this at their February 1st meeting. The school board did vote on this item at its February 1st board meeting, and the cap is in effect now. It took effect that night immediately. It does not affect those living in the base assignment area at that time. So any members of households that are in the Parkside Elementary area at that time will not be affected. They'll essentially be grandfathered in. Just reviewing the conversation from the board members at that meeting, there's understanding that capping does adversely affect individuals and families, but also is an alternative to reassignment, which I think more greatly affects families. It can also be a short-term solution because as they capped some schools, they also lifted the cap for some schools. The conversation sort of went in a manner that, based on a lot of different factors, elementary schools end up capping sooner than middle and high schools because of the different limitations that are placed on them. One of those being that K-3 class size limit legislation. I will send the presentation materials and the link to the video from that meeting, just so you can see that conversation and how those comments sort of played out. But it was noted that there was a very broad understanding that there would be families impacted by the cap for Parkside, but that Adams Elementary was the next nearest multi-track year-round elementary school with capacity. So I think there's understanding at the school system level, but also knowing that when the school opened in 2019, originally there was some concern that the rate of growth already at that time may impact the school, and now we're in February 22, and the school has already reached beyond its capacity, so to speak. So I think just continued relationships with our school board officials and staff will most certainly work on this letter on council's behalf and continue just to get additional information so that we can help support this effort and further this conversation.
Thank you. Very helpful. I'd like to recognize Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, followed by Councilmember Fender.
So I guess I want to follow up on this idea of having the school board interact with our planning and zoning board, or planning and zoning board interact with the school board. I think council needs to interact with the school board. We've talked about having a meeting with our school board members for quite some time, and I realize it's been very difficult in the last 2 years, but I think we need to have that conversation. And I will tell you, in the one-on-one conversation I had with Chris Haggerty, and he told me I could share this, that there are some alternatives to Adams as an overflow school. So there is this opportunity, even though they did, as Aaron just talked about, even though the school board did vote, there's an opportunity to look at some alternatives. So I think council needs to have that discussion with the school board. I would prefer that over the planning and zoning board. And I also want to thank Town Manager Page for her comments, because I think council needs to set the direction on what we want our education committee to do and how we want them to advocate. And this is one area where I was hoping that committee would help us and advocate this issue of capping, and then what the alternative is for an overflow school or trailers or whatever is the issue that I would like that committee to focus on in the future now, clearly, because this kind of has passed and it's in our hands now. But anyhow, long story short, I think we need to be interacting with our school board rep and some on the school board. I'd rather see that.
Councilmember Fender.
Yeah, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem and our Town Manager Page that the town council needs to be working with the school board, not the planning and zoning board. But if any committee should be looking at this or interacting with the school board, it should be the MPAC committee. I mean, they were created for a reason. We should let them do their job. And then lastly, regarding Carrie. Carrie also has land banked land and then sold it to the school board. And talking with Jennifer Robinson that evening about a year ago, she also mentioned that the town of Cary had a moratorium on development to allow time for infrastructure to catch up. So to say that it's not all Morrisville's fault or we can't do anything is an inaccurate statement. We should be working with Cary and Apex, but we also can make decisions to not make the problem worse as well.
Okay, so I think we're in good shape. Can we? Councilmember Rao, did you have a quick reaction?
Yeah, I don't want this to turn into a debate. I don't like it. I mean, first of all, what I was saying wasn't that it's, it's not, what I was saying was that it's a regional approach. So I don't, appreciate it when words are assumed or put into context when I say something. But in all fairness, what I was saying is a regional approach. And I think we have to work with our local government. So I'm not saying that, we don't have a responsibility, but I think we also have a responsibility to be, set realistic expectations to our residents. And like during the last campaign, we heard candidates saying they could build new schools, and you can't build new schools. Mm-hmm. So we need to make sure we're educating our residents that there's certain things you can do. So that's all I have to say about that matter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. This has been a really good discussion, and we could talk for a long time on this.
Yeah.
So I think that's we're taking a good step to interact with the school board. So we're going to ask some good questions and make sure that they're aware of our concerns. Town Manager Page, did you at this time want to take a look at meeting option discussion as part of the roundtable?
No, sir, that is just for information. It has also been emailed to council members just so that everybody has the same information.
Okay, thank you for that. So we jumped right into a roundtable item before I sort of tried to set the stage a little bit, but we have not had a roundtable in a while, and I want to encourage us to keep our idea sharing short and hope that we all lean towards supporting each other's ideas and direct staff to expend some level of effort and time and resources to bring us back more information, either through one of the resident committees, a report at later time, or a briefing item that is warranted. So we did that in that case. Does anyone else have any other items they'd like to discuss as roundtable? Councilmember Fender, please.
Yeah, I do. One thing I've been wanting to bring up for a while is the issue with smoking and tobacco use in the town's parks. I realize there's this little itty bitty sign in the Church Street Park, and there's signs in other parks, but it is not being enforced. It's not being adhered to, and it just seems like everyone's attitude is just to let it go. And the issue is, and I'm bringing this up now before we go into having cricket matches at Church Street Park. I've been involved in litter sweeps at Church Street Park multiple times now, and there's cigarette butts all over the place, and it's disgusting. And if we're going to have people coming in from out of town and looking at our park that we, very much value in our community, we should be taking care of it properly. So, I'm not saying staff is doing anything wrong. We're not. I'm just wondering if there's other things we can do. Have a bigger sign, have it at the front of the park, empower the Parks and Rec Department to ask people to not smoke. I think we need to make it more well known that smoking in the park is not acceptable. I just think I'm ashamed to look at and see the amount of cigarette butts that are in Church Street Park, and I'm kind of tired of picking them up too.
Okay, great. I'm sure that there's some best practices. I'd like to recognize Councilmember Rao and then ask staff to react.
Okay, this is just an idea that I want to float to council. I really don't want to, I'm not at the stage yet where I can ask staff to look into it, but I want to take the first step to bring it up tonight and just sort of get your all's reactions. But
Just a second, pardon my interruption. Are you talking about the smoking that she just brought up?
No, it's separate.
Okay,
sorry.
can we park that for a second, though?
Okay.
And did you have something on this?
No.
Councilmember Garamella, and then I'll ask staff.
No, I agree with Donna. It is pretty disgusting. We already passed the ordinance that no use of tobacco, and there's ordinance in place. But nevertheless, with cricket and, we getting national and international in the future, it's only going to get worse. So I feel I'm almost thinking like, in airports, you have zones of smoking. The guy who is a smoker, he doesn't know. He just wants to go find a parking lot or somewhere and go and do it. Or, so especially cricket is like 8-hour game, and the guys who have a habit of it, find different ways. So instead of having like cigarette butts all over at some it would be better to keep it at one confined area or some place that they can go do it, which is not within the park because the ordinance is already in place, but a spot that they could go towards and do it and then come back. At least in that way, the litter is controlled, the people know where to go if they have to, and not go hiding into, the woods or the parking lots or behind the cars. That's exactly what's happening right now.
Yeah, I imagine there are some best practices, and we want to be reasonable. We know that there's needs out there. So I'd like to ask if staff has any reaction or if there's something that they could bring back to us to react to in the future.
So Mayor, I would offer a couple of things. One is as we see the cricket increase, we're going to have a more regular presence in the parks for those events. We're already in discussions with both Parks and Rec and Public Works about how that staffing will work, using some part-time staff from Parks and Rec on the weekends to be a more regular presence there, not just for cricket, but for other events that are occurring. Sorry, didn't have a microphone. So, brief summary, we're already working towards having a regular presence in the parks related to cricket events, but again, also for other events that are occurring in the parks, whether that's a rental or other activities that may be going on. So we can continue to focus on that as we bring more staff to be a regular presence. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. We can look into what Councilmember Garamella has suggested as far as a smoking area, perhaps. So I do think there are several things that we can look at to try to address that a little more proactively. Councilmember Fender.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Rabati, followed by myself.
And if I could just add, I think that we could also work with our partners and ask them to help enforce with people that they have at the park as well. It's just another idea.
Councilmember Rabati?
I would like to come out strongly against the idea of, I think it's a bad road to go down to make smoking areas in our parks where smoking is currently not allowed. I mean, you know, when you said if this is a need, I mean, it's not a need. It's a habit. And, I'm sorry that people are going to be inconvenienced by this, but I mean, I think if we start putting smoking areas in our parks, like what message are we sending doing that? I mean, I'm all for finding a solution. I'm all for increased presence in the parks, and I'll pick up litter like a champ. So will Donna. But I think that catering to the smokers at the risk and inconvenience of everybody else is the wrong move and the wrong message.
Okay. Did you have a follow-up?
Me?
Councilmember Graham, I see your thing up.
No,
Okay.
I'm going to say, I'm throwing an idea because the key is you can change a habit in which the person already has. I'm not a smoker, but I see people where many of my good friends, I tell them not to smoke. They say, yeah, and they disappear, and I know where they're gone. So for us, it affects the litter and creating like a more of a smoke-free environment, because I've seen people go right behind the kids' park and smoke there. And the way they catch their butt and everything, it's impossible for how much ever volunteers you have to catch. It is hard. So what is the alternative? We know we have an ordinance in place. It's not working. So what's the next way? That's my whole thought process. And I'm not promoting smoking by any means, in an area, but trying to have one place so that they know where to go and not just scatter around the entire park.
So I'll chime in, and I think we added at least one new sign because I suggested it at Church Street, but I think that we could probably benefit from some more signage and maybe a little bit of a social media educational campaign to sort of keep it top of mind for people. And I do believe that the health of our community is up to us to promote. So maybe having a smoking area in our parks is not a great idea. So I'd love to see if this council would support staff bringing back a little bit more than what Assistant Manager Zudema suggested, which is just ramp it up as we ramp up the cricket. I think there's already a problem. So would council be okay with asking staff to bring back a little bit more than that? Maybe some signage, maybe a plan to do a smoking education campaign, anti-smoking in our parks? Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
So yes, I think that's fine. I'm still struggling with this designated smoking area in a park. I hear what the concern is, and I would agree with the concern about we don't want littering all over our parks, and if there's a way to concentrate it in one area, because folks are going to do it anyhow, and even if our staff is out there, they're not everywhere, and we're talking about 3,500 people going to be at some of these events in the future, so it's going to be difficult at best to police this and enforce it, but I'd be curious to know if something like this exists in another park somewhere. I've not really paid attention, so I think that's my to-do to figure it out, but I'd like to know what other communities do with this issue. And yeah, I think an education is always really important on every issue we talk about, and it's important to reinforce and our education efforts as often as we can. So I'm not obviously in favor of that as well.
Okay, I'd like to circle back to Councilmember Fender for a final word on this item.
Now you just made me lose my train of thought. I'm very happy with the discussion, and the one thing I will add is the litter is an issue, but it is also an issue with people smoking around you. When I was at one of the cricket games, there was a gentleman smoking right behind me and didn't think, it was an issue for him. So it's not just the litter, it's also the secondhand smoke.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you very much. I'd like to recognize Councilmember Rao for his next item then.
Well, I want to thank, sorry to jump the gun, I totally in agreement with Councilmember Fender's point, and just assume, I think we should just move forward with that, and I don't believe there should be smoking in any parks. My idea is, I've been watching and observing closely, Cary and Apex making investments in affordable housing. And I know staff is working on these issues, and we're going to be going through this, but just an idea, I know that Apex has started an affordable housing advisory board, which is sort of falling under their planning and zoning board, and they have a housing program manager. So it got me thinking, I just don't know whether we could we've had in the past, a task force on transportation funding, which, when we created that, it was to provide recommendations on, where we could get funding for different roads and transit and stuff. So I mean, I want to flush it out more before we ask staff to do anything because they're so busy. But my idea is, having eventually sort of an affordable housing kind of, task force that would be chartered with providing, funding and policy recommendations, maybe, bringing in ideas of, the types of affordable housing out there rather than just apartments. There's a lot of regional efforts going now. I attended the Wake County Commissioners meeting 2 weeks ago, and there's just all kinds of opportunities. And so, it's just an idea. I don't really feel comfortable giving staff direction saying, go look at this. But I wanted to see if council would be, interested in us. At least maybe I could pull together some information and send it to everybody, and then maybe the next roundtable item we could do it. I just wanted to bring it up today as an idea. That's all.
Well, in support of a fellow council member, I'd support asking staff to throw that into the hopper with all the other affordable housing stuff that they're doing. But would staff like to react to what was just brought up?
Yes, sir. Staff issued that RFP to follow up on the affordable housing study. Did not get responses the first time, reissued, is now in the process of finalizing the negotiations to actually start that work for the items that council wanted to look at from that study. That will include additional public engagement, and I would say that may be your first step before you consider forming committees. That information needs to come to you first, I believe, and that will include additional public engagement as a part of that process. So that is going to be teeing up very shortly now. I think it would be better inform your discussion if you allow that work to happen first.
Councilmember Howe, is that okay to sort of put a pin in that one and maybe readdress it?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up as an idea. I think this is great to hear this. And, my idea is, eventually having some structure even to our, planning and zoning where we get that public feedback. But then there's, the board, even the planning and zoning board can start evaluating kind of like our mix and our makeup and then seeing, okay, this is the areas where we can have affordable housing. These are the types of, programs that we can have. So maybe I'm jumping the cart a little bit, but I like these roundtable items to be where we're, able to express to our colleagues and the staff kind of the kinds of things that we want to see. I'm excited about the potential, but, and obviously these things cost money. We have to invest money, dollars, if we're going to see affordable housing work. So we're going into budget season. So, but yeah, I'm happy. Thank you.
Okay. Did anyone else have any other? Thank you. I couldn't see that. It was shaped the other way. Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson, please.
So I like the idea of getting public feedback about affordable housing because, as we are all aware, the housing prices in Morrisville and the region are just rising every month astronomically. We do have an affordable housing policy in the town of Morrisville. The consultants will help us interpret that policy and provide options primarily with the emphasis on home ownership. I think that there's many ways, many different products to own a home, and to get that public feedback would be very valuable. I think having focus groups just like some here, some there is probably not going to be as valuable once we have a defined scope, but to have a series of public input sessions, maybe not as robust as a dedicated task force, but maybe to get feedback on a series of questions would be very helpful. I mean, there's a lot of different home ownership partnerships with deed restrictions or smaller homes or different types of communities. And we need to explore that and understand how our community embraces those options as well. Thanks.
Yeah, I think the study and the consultant will be so helpful in that. So thanks for bringing that forward. Councilmember Rabati?
No, I'm sorry. It wasn't about that. Sorry.
Okay. Was that for another roundtable item?
Yes.
'Cause we're to that point now. If you'd like to share a roundtable item.
Oh, okay. Are we done with that one? Yeah, so we now have been banking land, and we're talking about the potential for additional parks or green spaces or natural areas. And I think that it is important to maximize the amenities for the town without destroying a lot of tree canopy and a lot of, doing a ton of building out. So I also think, amenity-wise, that I think that Morrisville is a wonderful place to live if you are a child, and it is a wonderful place to live. I love it very much as an adult. But as a mom of 5 people who have been here when they were teenagers, I can say that there is not a lot for teenagers to do in Morrisville. And I think a teenager without something to do is a teenager that's liable to, to start making bad choices. So I would like to, when we look at what we're going to do with our land in the upcoming months and even years, I would like us to really think about putting some things together that can engage our teenage population. So one idea that I had, I'm not married to it by any stretch of the imagination, but where I came from in Princeton, there was a really nice skate park, and it did not take up more space than this room. And that's something that we could, that we could think about, that we wouldn't have to do a ton of tree, we wouldn't have to do a ton of deforestation to put it in. So that's not necessarily, I'm not saying that my idea is a skate park, but I'm saying that my idea is that we, as a council, we really keep in mind, ways to engage our teenage population and our, even our middle school population.
Okay, I concur with that. It's been a while since we adopted our Parks and Rec master plan, and I'm not sure if we had a real concentration on teenage usage, and during the points allocation, I don't know if skate park was even in there as one of the options. But I know in Apex, they took some land that wasn't being used near Railroad and really made a very successful skate park. And Cary, right next door, has Skate Cary. So that sounds like great ideas. And I think what I hear you asking is for staff to bring back some more options, maybe during this budget, to serve the teen population a little bit more. I know that we're working with Wake Tech to get a gaming thing, which might meet some of that need. But I think that you may be right that there's maybe a little bit of a gap in our service levels to the teens intentionally. So would any other council members like to react to her suggestion before I pass it to staff for their reaction? Councilmember Garamella.
But I just thought, the one that Wake Tech is doing, for gaming and all those things, is attracting that population. Obviously, the gaming is a big pop, from teenager to old people, so that keeps going. But I think I understand, and I think that's a good idea. But we are working towards it, and I was very happy to see that actually it was the ARPA funds, right, that we were able to utilize for that. The gaming, the collaboration that we had.
I don't know if it was specific. I don't recall if it was specifically related to ARP or not.
Oh, for some reason I thought I had the list of usages that were done. So, but nevertheless, that was a good collaboration with Wake Tech on that.
Okay. So does anyone have a problem with asking staff to sort of bring back some ideas about intentionality towards our teen population? Reaction from staff?
So if I may now make my shameless plug, as you received your second budget brainstorming tool today, it is a perfect opportunity for you to weigh in on some of the things you've already talked about today. Affordable housing is in there in a variety of ways, as is creative ideas and aspirational goals about how you want to look at programming and spending money. So I do encourage you to include those ideas and that we're going to pull it all together for you to look at.
Okay. That's a great plug about how we're going to invest our tax dollars. Back to you, Councilmember Rabadi, for any final thoughts on that item.
I guess that I don't suppose I necessarily need staff to do anything right now. I think what I'm asking for is just an awareness on council's part as we start talking about, what we're going to do with these different points of land, is that I feel, the gaming program is a fantastic addition to our catalog of services. I'm just saying that I think that we have a services gap in that area. And I just kind of wanted to bring that top of mind.
As Town Manager Page noted, that was the perfect time to plant that seed as we go into our budget discussions and fill out that survey.
And Michael James has confirmed we did use ARPA money, although Wake Tech is really providing that equipment for us. So our contribution to that is staffing, et cetera.
Because I have a photographic memory. I saw that.
Very nice. Okay. I have one that I'd like to throw out there real quick. And my overriding big picture ask is for us to focus efforts on resident and stakeholder engagement. So create input and feedback loops. And I know that our communications department and IT are already starting to work on that. But as an example, when the police department posted about Chill Morrisville to reduce aggressive driving, the residents engaged. And if each department were to determine how and where and why stakeholder engagement can improve our service delivery, then everything that can follow that data. So that's just more of an overarching thought. And more specifically, the stewardship program is a great example of how we're getting some really good citizen engagement. Historically, Public Works has been taking lead on adopt a roads and things like that. And Parks and Rec has now engaged groups more intentionally to adopt areas and roadways. So if we could work or consider having Public Works, Park and Rec, and IT map out which roads and greenways and parks are cleaned and when, and make that public, the groups will engage and clean more because it's essentially a scoreboard up there. You can see when things are being done. And I'm very proud of Mayor Pro Tem Johnson for organizing the town council. We'll be doing the Indian Creek Trailhead really soon. And more groups would be motivated to get involved if they could see what areas of town are being cleaned. And then as they drive along and they can see areas that aren't being cleaned, they can ask why. And it's because we don't have any groups associated with that area, for example. And I know that we also have contractors working on many areas of town, our major roadways. So keeping those clean and knowing when they were recently cleaned is important information to share with our residents so they understand that it is being done, but maybe we need to do it more often or something like that. So I'm just looking for any kind of reaction from the council if we think that a visual representation of what's being cleaned when would be benefit to our townspeople. Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to put that out there. That's something I'm going to put in my summary survey. It's just a thought. So that's a lot. Does anyone else have any other roundtable items that they'd like to share? Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
So before I share, we didn't really timestamp this one item,
Right.
So I would think we probably should wrap this up pretty soon, so I'll be quick.
Okay.
That's my reminder to be really quick, because we have two more items on the agenda tonight. Back when Kimberly came before council and we talked about our master sustainability plan, one of the things I talked about was I was hoping that I would see a sustainability 101 class for our residents. I do think folks really, this is an issue that resonates with folks and they really want to be able to participate and make a difference. And sometimes it's that education that helps. So this is more of a question because this is an issue and a project that I'm really I'm hoping that will come to fruition. But I know we have the master sustainability plan coming later this month on our agenda.
Next week.
Yeah, so so I'm asking for a preview. Is this part of it, or am I going to bring it up again when we talk about the plan?
I think that education on an ongoing basis overall is a part of the master plan. The goals are much more specific, I'll say in concrete, but that is Kimberly's role, is education and awareness. That's part of her job description. So I think that's a great question to talk about with her next week.
Okay, thank you. And I've mentioned this, I think at the last council meeting. I'm going to mention it again tonight, and I'll probably mention it again next week. The public input session that she sponsored for, and it was virtual, for our citizens was very well done. So I would urge folks to follow this topic and then follow those opportunities that are to come, hopefully, as Martha said. And that's all I wanted to share tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Garamella, please.
It's a new topic, not this.
Okay.
I just wanted to, if I can. Before I go, I was just looking up the smoking designated areas. Coca Booth has it, and Ting Park has it. So they have certain restrictions, but they do.
I'm sorry, could you talk into the microphone? I didn't really hear what you were saying.
The designated smoking areas, like Coca Booth has designated smoking areas, and also the Ting Park in Holly Springs, they also have it. So just putting out there, I'll let the staff decide. But my question, my roundtable item is, when we started our communication department, it was only, I know, was one person, the PIO. Now we have a fully established communication department, and there's a lot of information, like the one, this idea triggered to me based on what Liz said, is education piece. I don't know if it has been tried, Martha, but like Carrie has a Carrie TV kind of a thing, like Carrie TV, like where they do it like short videos, they can come, the fire department can do it in a more professional way instead of just, using something. And those we can have a YouTube channel where they, come and talk about a certain topic, staff or this one. So in that way, that is continuously getting fed, and we can use that for education, not for all purposes. All departments, could be public works, could be public safety, could be engineering, sustainability, any items. That's just an idea based on what you said. Like, I thought it triggered.
So what I'm hearing is that you want us to continue to expand our communications department and use new technologies to expand it beyond just social media, maybe have a little bit more videos out there and things like that.
Yeah, like simple, like, did you know that? Like, like a car seat belt, okay? We say we give the services, but when two people come and talk about it and to do it, like free home inspection, for, fire safety, then, like public works, especially we were struggling to find what number to call. The number, we didn't have it on our tips, but it had videos. If you have like a trash can wheel, gone, like what do you do? I'm just throwing examples like sustainability, like rain gardens from the stormwater, like what plants to plant, the community garden that we have, okay, this is what it is, at this time, if you want to plant, these are the things that you can plant year round. So I can go on and on with ideas, but this just opens up, every department will get excited to give their, 2-minute clip that can get broadcasted.
Town Manager Page, you want to plug the survey again, or?
We do a lot of that already. We already have a YouTube channel. We do not have access to a public access TV channel. Long story there. And we do some of those videos. It's part of a communications plan and a strategy, and any of those ideas will be helpful for things that you think might be interesting to people.
Cool. Yeah, I really enjoy Carrie Matters, for example, and they have that TV channel streaming all the time, so they have an opportunity to put a lot of stuff out there. And I see our fire department, for example, doing a lot more of that themselves, and the police department using our current social media channels to share information, which is great. So that's a great thing to highlight. Councilmember Garamella. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
So I just want to echo what Councilmember Garamella said too, because I think there is a lot that we offer our citizens that we need to promote more. And our police and fire department do that. We've had Public Works has done, I think probably almost every department, those outward-facing departments have done some kind of video or another to share with the public. But I just wanted to make sure I heard Town Manager correctly. If we think, and I have done this, and if we think there's something that's of importance to the citizens, you do want to hear from us so that you can help promote it to the rest of the community. Is that correct? Am I hearing that?
Yes, we need to incorporate that into a plan because they can't all be done and they can't all be done at the same time, but that is why we have a communications department.
Okay, thank you. So these ideas we could share, and and I will tell you, I did that recently when I talked about the fact that we have on our website a report a problem portal or form that you can fill out. And I'm not sure folks always knew that was there, or maybe, we have new folks that didn't know. So you all did on social media, our communication department highlighted that and put that out there, and I appreciate that. But I think there are things like that we can share, and then communications can turn around and do their magic. So thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, so I think we're getting close to wrapping. Most of us had a chance to share a roundtable item. Does anyone else have any roundtable items before we move on? Okay, another great discussion. We appreciate how the town manager manages the roundtable chart and keeps us appraised of what's going on there. That's a good way for us to keep informed about the progress towards each of these items. Anything from staff before we move on to the next item?
Yeah, not to be a downer, but staff allocated about 30 minutes for the roundtable. So we're at an hour. You have 2 presentations. I sort of committed to a 2-hour meeting. We're way behind on that. It's time for a break. We also committed to break. So I just wanted you to sort of be aware of the time for the meeting this evening.
Okay, we're scheduled for a 15-minute break. Are we comfortable taking a 10-minute break and saving 5 minutes, catching 5 minutes back? I'm seeing some nods, so let's go ahead, take a break right now. Let's try to get back together at 7:08. Thank you very much, 7:08. It is 7:08. We are back from our break. That was really good discussion on roundtable items. At this time, we're going to move on to item 4B. Rodney Watkins, GIS Manager, will facilitate the Morrisville redistricting post-2020 census discussion. Mr. Watkins.
Thank you, Mayor Gawley. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. So this is going to be redistricting, and I will not take a full half an hour, so I will keep my presentation short. This is something that we typically consider, the town typically considers after a federal census has been conducted. And over the years, since about 2000, we've actually redistricted Morrisville 3 previous times due to a couple of special censuses and a decennial census that have been conducted for our jurisdiction. So this redistricting would be based on the most recent 2020 federal census, which, although the numbers were late due to a variety of reasons and obvious reasons, it's still something that we can now consider even though it's 2022. So this is a little brief history, a little background on the previous redistricting that we prepared that I've been involved with all 3 of them. This is just some basic information. And what the big takeaway is, we base the redistricting, how we approach the redistricting, on guidance from town council. So in this instance, in 2005, the direction given was working inward from the town boundaries. A 10% variance between the districts was acceptable, and each of the districts' representation would be about 3,000 residents. So one thing to note, just backing up real quickly, we are not required to redistrict because our districts are residency districts instead of electoral districts. So every resident in town, every registered voter can vote for any of the council members running at that particular time. So that's just a side note. We are not required, but we always have, just to balance the districts out. After the decennial census, we were out of balance again, so we decided as the town to do redistricting, and again the guidance given by council at the time was to keep the existing district council members in the separate districts, keep the boundaries as much as practical, achieve population in each district with variances adopted by town council. And I wasn't 100% clear on what that percentage was, and I was trying to look back at the notes. But generally, each district representation would consist of about 4,600 residents at that time. And our latest one and most recent was again after our special census, which was conducted by the Census Bureau and paid by the town. We realized an increase of about 5,000 people. So that redistricting, a lot of current council members would remember. And again, reshaping the boundaries. And we got a little more direction, a little more specificity with the criteria on which to base the district sizes. And one of them was the neighborhood alignment and not splitting up neighborhoods and using geographic alignment. The geographic alignment was not used to design the districts. We relied on the blocks that we received from the Census Bureau. And in this case, the representation varied no more than 10% from the average population. But I also prepared a district map at a 5% variance and as close to average population was prepared. And in that case, each district representation was about 5,900 folks. So again, this is the resulting map from the 2015 special census population. And after I prepared the maps, they went through some public review, came to town council, and council chose the average to close map, which is this one here. And it's just outlining who represents which district. This is just a representative map of where generally the larger subdivisions are. This does not, I want to note that this does not include the apartment complexes that we have in town. And those you'll see in the census blocks on the next slide. Those blocks that have apartments in them are typically smaller blocks that have a higher population. But we can, I will show that map in a second. This is the census blocks, and this data, this GIS data, I get directly from the Census Bureau. And the geographic boundary, the polygon with the number inside, is the census-created census block, and then the associated population within each of those blocks based on the 2020 census, the enumeration. So you'll note that there's some very large blocks with a fairly small population. And in this case, there's 24 in this large block. But in this case over here on the left, it is an apartment complex off Davis Drive. And that block is very small, but it has 630 residents in it. So as I'm going through and doing the redistricting, one thing to note, those districts cannot be split. I cannot split them. I follow the boundaries when I'm creating our residency districts. So that's just, as I'm going through this process, if we decide to proceed with it, those are the considerations that I have to take into account. So again, we're talking about this because the decennial census was conducted April 2020, and our population came out again, as we expected, an increase of about 5,900 over our special census just 5 years ago. So in this case, our district representation, average district representation, should be about 7,400 people. And you'll see, I did a calculation based on our current districts and the census population and the difference in the district size to the average. So we're some are off pretty far. If you use a 10% variance just as a number, this would be 641. So that's off. These District 3 and District 4, say if we use that 10% example, are the only ones that would fall within that range, the plus or minus 10%. If a 5% is chosen, it gets a little tighter. And I think maybe only District 3 falls into that. But so again, I'm going to reiterate, we're not required, because we have residential districts, we are not required to revise our districts, but we always have, just to balance out all the districts. As I noted on the one map, that we cannot split those census blocks, and there's instances where we have very large geographic blocks with a small population and some very small geographic blocks with a large population. So all that's balanced out going forward with this if we proceed. So in the past, we've used other criteria. The existing council member remains within the current residency district. We've used that. There is an option of just completely starting from scratch. That honestly is not my preferred approach, but it is an option. There is also the option to either split or to not split neighborhoods. And in some instances, neighborhoods include apartment complexes. And unfortunately, the current map does split an apartment complex off Morrisville Parkway, but that's just some anecdotal information. But that's some of the criteria that council could provide to us, and we can move forward. And the variance options previously used were the plus or minus 5 to 10%, and then the closest to average. Try to get as close as possible to that average, which is based on the current census of 2020 census would be about 7,400 people. So some staff recommendations, not starting from scratch, and adjust the existing residency districts. This is a manual process that I do. I find that the easiest method because we are relatively small. It is easy to move a block into a district and do the calculation in our GIS software and then readjust and just go through that process. Using a variance option of plus or minus 5% because there is some NC-specific case law, again, that related to electoral districts, but the plus or minus 5% does give us a good amount of flexibility, but also stays within some specific case law. Using best efforts to not split neighborhoods, it lowers the confusion. Also using existing features as natural boundaries, typically roads. Sometimes the blocks are based on streams, but typically roads. And then there's a question: is there a goal to keep council members in the current district? And once we get direction from council and the criteria, and Martha, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not necessarily looking for all that criteria or all this to be fleshed out tonight. It'll be a future direction. Is that correct?
Rodney, I think that will depend on council's initial reactions to what you're saying and whether they want to use something similar or talk about it more.
Right. But once we get the direction, I can generate a timeline, and if necessary or required or desired, we can have public input sessions, online input, etc., however we want to structure it. So with that, I'm open to questions or turn it over to you, Mayor Colley, and Council for discussion.
Okay, sounds great. Good presentation. If you could leave it on the staff recommendations slide, that gives us some talking points and things to react to. Would anyone like to share their thoughts first? I'll recognize Councilmember Garamella.
Hey, thanks, Rodney. Excellent presentation. My question is more about the census block. Who determines the census block? Because you gave an example of an apartment complex, which was 600 people in that census block. How is it determined? Was it before the apartment complex, was it still a census block, or was it blank at that time?
That has been a census block. The Census Bureau determines the census block, and they typically try to create a block that meets certain criteria. Typically no more than 3,000 people per block, but sometimes they just can't. We have in the past recommended some block splits on larger blocks. The Census Bureau has not accepted those, but the Census Bureau ultimately makes the decision on the blocks and the block sizes. And sometimes some of the older apartments were already in a block. The Census Bureau created those, and other times, say in Kitts Creek, the Census Bureau went back and they modified those because that was a large block at one point.
So my understanding, you said like each block is around approximately 3,000, right? So then the example that you quoted of 600 in a certain, is it a sub-block or what is that called? A census tract or?
No, that is a census block.
So then,
it's general criteria that the census tries to use. I'm not saying that they always meet that criteria.
And I think they try to keep a maximum of 3,000. They're not trying to make each one 3,000.
We have some census blocks that could have as little as 3, and if you see some of those numbers, 7, and then there's some at the other end.
okay.
And I think the important point is we do not control that, and we can't break them up. So we have to work, and that's why our district boundaries are, some are much larger than others. It's based on the population in those census blocks.
Okay, got it. The reason I was asking all these questions is because the Macroman bypass, the new Macroman, where we will be potentially getting a lot of multifamilies on that section, will that change the criteria of the census blocks in the future? Is where I was trying to go towards, because, but I think that's a future discussion. But that's my question.
Right. It could, but we can't base what we're doing on what we expect or could see in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, and lastly, my comment is last time you did an excellent job. So kudos to you, and I'm sure, I'm confident that you'll do the same thing. So
thank you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
So I agree. Rodney, you have done this several times, and each time have done an excellent job. So we're in good hands with you leading this effort. Thank you for your recommendations here under the staff recommendation. I agree with all of your recommendations. I have one question about how many maps you would bring back to council. Are we talking 1, 2, 3 maps and then council chooses? What are your thoughts about that?
That depends on the council. I would not recommend bringing back, you may remember, I think our first time we did this, we had 11 or so maps. It got a little confusing. And I think our most recent time we had 5, 3, 4, 5 maybe, which helped keep the conversation and the input productive. So it's based on council direction. If you want plus or minus 5%, and then you want a plus or minus 10%, and then you maybe want a closest to average as I can get. Just off the top of my head, that would be fine, but however many maps you want me to bring, I will bring them.
Okay, I think 3 is the max. I would tell you that right now. And I do remember the days when we had those multiple maps, and you're right, that's really just out of control. So I think 3 would be a limit for me. I don't know that maybe I need to think about this a little more, whether I want them all 3 to be different, a 5, a 10, and then closest 2, or whether you bring back 3 that are in the plus or minus 5%. I guess I need a minute to kind of think about that, but yeah, I think 3 would be max. And as far as keeping council members in current districts, I would say yes, only because my gut is that that's going to happen anyhow, based on current makeup of this council. I don't know that that's helps or hurts, or I think it's just going to turn out that way, quite frankly.
Okay. Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson, followed by Councilmember Abadi, please.
Thank you. Rodney, thank you so much for this presentation. I like the history of it, as well as the explanation about the census blocks. It's weird that a census block is not the same number of people per census block. I think you would expect to see more census blocks where there's more population, but that doesn't represent 1,000 people or 50 people, or it's all different, so it's very strange. I would say that 3 maps of the 5%, because the census blocks are so tricky and they're not even in their population, you probably could develop 3, somewhat different maps within a 5% range. Just keeping neighborhoods together, I think, is a priority. I really, my neighborhood is actually divided by Morrisville Carpenter Road, and consequently, outside of Morrisville, any state race, any federal race, we could have 2 different representatives for the same neighborhood, and that's just how it is. But for Morrisville, we can control that, and it'd be nice if we could keep our neighborhoods and apartment complexes together. I am indifferent about trying to keep the council members in the same district. It'd be nice, but it's not a must. And keeping existing features such as streams and other things and roads might be helpful to keep the districts aligned properly. So, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Rabadi, please.
So, yeah, Rodney, so I'm coming off of about 8 straight years of going to Raleigh to scream about gerrymandering. So I don't really understand what we would be doing if we got 3 or 5 maps and then pick the districts that we like. I think that I don't care if the council members are in the same district, although I agree with Mayor Pro Tem that I think it's just going to work out that way. But whether it's balancing everything out by creating, and create another district, or, I don't know, create another at-large district or whatever it is, I think that we should honestly come up with one fair map and then adopt it. So I guess I'm not clear on exactly what we would be looking at with the 3 different maps?
Well, it would be a rebalancing. I would not, as a staff member, be able to create a new district. That would have to be an amendment, a charter amendment. So I would use adjust the current, and I haven't looked at these in detail. I didn't want to get ahead of council at all. So there are different ways of moving, say, the west boundary of that abuts against the eastern boundary of another district, and adjusting those one way or another, and maybe they all come out as 5%, but it does need to split a neighborhood, or it travels up Davis Drive a little ways. I don't think it would be as dramatic differences, but there could be some differences that make more sense to council, and I could certainly create 3 different maps based on that plus or minus 5% that for you to consider. And again, I haven't really looked at it in detail, but there are some obvious districts where some population would move over.
Rodney, go back to your slide that shows where the districts are out. I think that'll help you answer the question. Yes, so I think this is what I'm hearing Rodney say. District 1 is almost 1,000 less than an average. Let's just use an average. So that means District 1 is going to need more people to balance it out. District 2 is over the average, so people would move from District 2 into, that's what he would move things to balance those out. And again, either at an average or some incremental. Rodney's correct that staff does not have the authority to add districts or change that. That is by charter, that's a council discussion of a different type.
So Councilmember Rabati, if I can maybe just add a little something. I think I remember a long time ago when he had lots of different maps, they had ended up with the same 5%, but they were shaped pretty different because he has certain areas that he can move from here to here or there to there. So I think the idea is that the maps might look different, and if we ask them to do their best to not split neighborhoods, one of the maps might actually split a neighborhood, the other might not. So we might choose to not split the neighborhood, even though the map looks a little more funky or does something else that we don't like. So I think that gives us the opportunity to do some pros and cons within the maps. So I think that's why there might be a reason to bring more than one map. But I definitely understand your concern that we shouldn't be choosing our voters, for example, but everyone votes for everybody. So that's what changes it a little bit. But throwing it back to you.
Okay, I understand what's been said. I'll wait to see the maps. Thanks.
Okay, so do I hear correctly you'd prefer just the one map? Just because we're trying to give staff some direction.
I guess that I would, I don't know, color me undecided, I guess. I mean, I think that if there's a map that satisfies all the requirements, I don't see why we need 3 maps. But as long as we're not getting into like a, oh no, I want to keep these voters in my district kind of situation, then I guess I'm fine with multiple maps.
Okay, sounds good. I'll go next if that's okay. If we could bring up the recommendation slide again, that'd be good. I support your preference of not starting from scratch. I think a variance option of plus or minus 5, if you could maybe consider doing 2 of those and one closest to average, that would be helpful. I don't think we want to go up to 10% and risk having someone push back. I support best efforts, not split neighborhoods. Existing features, just do your best, doesn't matter. I think that it would be good to keep council members in their current district, because then that takes away the possibility of someone being districted out or double bunking or anything like that, and that makes, I think, the other decisions easier. So that's why I would support that. One thing that I'd like to put forth as a possibility, which would be a charter change, and this has been discussed by various councils in the past, is getting rid of districts altogether and having a mayor at large and 6 council members at large. And there's lots of pros and cons either way. There might be a lot of people from one neighborhood, for example. That's up to the voters. So I'd be curious to know if the council would be supportive of just having that as a discussion as part of this overall discussion. Not saying that we shouldn't go forward with making maps, just keep that in the back of our minds that that might be a possibility. And there's lots of different ways to do that. You might want to put it to a referendum of the voters. You might want to make a decision as a council right off the bat. So I just wanted to throw that into the discussion. But I do not want to sideline the idea of getting maps going forward, because we need to have that option as well. So those are my thoughts. Councilmember Fender.
Thank you. I'm in agreement with the recommendations that staff has put up there. I do lean toward keeping the current council members in their current district. You know, based on what the slide was up there before, where it was showing the population for each district and the variance toward the average, I think, and what's going to happen is some of District 2 and some of District 4 are going to be, you know, some of these neighborhoods are going to be cut off and reassigned to District 1 to even everything out. So I'm okay with coming back with multiple maps, whatever makes sense, 3, not 11. And then lastly, the comment on Mayor Colley, what you just said, I mean, granted, we're all essentially at-large members. We're all in Morrisville, votes for each one of us. I do think it is important that we keep the districts and that council members, you know, must be from that particular district. I don't think anyone wants like all of the town council members from Kitts Creek or all of the town council members from Breckenridge. I think the way we have it now keeps our town council balanced and, represents all of the neighborhoods. I mean, granted, doesn't represent all the neighborhoods, but to the best of our ability. So I would not be in favor of making us all at large and where council members could come from anywhere.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Sounds good. I've been trying to keep track. Have we heard from, I'd like to hear from Councilmember Rowe?
Well, I mean, for me, I see value in having districts because it's a hybrid system, but, I guess I'd be willing to I have to think it over a little bit because, I am concerned that over the last few years, I mean, I actually was the council member that was the swing vote to vote for not having a lot large a number of years ago. But since that time, I think that the only disadvantage of having districts is it does create a sense of, neighborhood versus neighborhood. And, I represent this neighborhood, which I don't think is really good. I think that that's just something to think about. And I've seen that get worse over the last few years. So, but I don't think that it's, it's something that, are you asking us to think about it? Because, I don't want it to hold up you're getting a map, but I do think that, everything's always on the table, right?
Yeah, that was just a think about type of thing. I think tonight is mostly about concentrating on giving staff direction about maps. I just wanted to plant the seed of the possibility of all at large as another option in lieu of doing the maps. So that's not something that we need to dig into right now, especially since we're trying to have a short meeting. But I appreciate your thoughts and your history on it. But if you want to try to react to some of the staff recommendations to help them build maps, that would be really helpful tonight.
I mean, I like it. I think that my preference would be that if the maps do happen to keep the council members in a current district, that's fine. But I would prefer us not looking at that, just looking at the maps and, you know, looking at the variances within the 5% and just coming back with, you know, 3 maps, basic maps, and then, you know, we make a decision.
Okay, 3 maps at 5%, best efforts not to split neighborhoods, and do not have council members' districts be one of the considerations.
Yeah, because I feel like we should just.
If that summarizes your thoughts. Okay. I think everyone had a chance to share. Does anyone else have any final thoughts? Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
So just one really, really important comment, and I'm going to repeat because Ann brought this up, and it's a really important topic. Gerrymandering is a whole different ballgame. What we're talking about here is not picking our voters. That's what gerrymandering is. Everyone in town votes for each one of us. We don't have the ability to pick our voters, no matter what we do. What the maps do actually is, well, to Councilmember Fender's comments, it's make sure the representation is spread out across the town, but it also, the moving of the map affects the residents that may choose to run for council. You know, when you move them from one district to another, it affects their ability whether they can run in the next election or not. So those are the kinds of things I think about when I've gone through this, because I try not to move people because I don't want them to be adversely affected when we move the lines. But there's really no way to incorporate that into criteria. I think Rodney does the absolute best he can to make sure the districts are as balanced as they can be. He's done a great job all these years. I no doubt he'll do a great job again. But just to repeat again, this is really has nothing to do with gerrymandering. And I think that's really important because I think the last time we went through this, that same topic came up and was used. And I want to make sure that it's understood that has absolutely nothing to do with what we're doing here. And that really is important. We are not choosing our voters.
Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson.
Hopefully I can close this topic and we can proceed. I think what Mayor Pro Tem Johnson says is very true, is when we select a map that affects the candidates that might have aspirations to run for a council seat and not, and the incumbents do influence some of that with one of our criteria about maintaining the incumbents within that. I have been on both sides looking at, you know, the hybrid system that we have with both at large and looking at all at large. I watch Apex every year because they have a plurality kind of system. I think the hybrid system works for us, and I like how Councilmember Fender stated her position, because we don't want representation from just one side of town. It's important that we have people with diverse perspectives, and geography does affect our small town. We have different ways to get around the town. We have different amenities throughout the town. We have different neighborhoods throughout the town. It's important that we keep balance. The other consideration that hasn't been stated is that at-large races seem to be twice as expensive than the district races. I think it's important that we encourage people to run for office and they should be able to run for office on a reasonable amount of money. But if we start going all at large, there would have to be constant campaigning and fundraising, and I don't think that's where we want to put our focus. We want to put our focus on local government, local thinking, and attention to our neighborhoods. So I cost is a consideration for campaigns. Let's not put that burden on future candidates and keep the hybrid system as it is. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see anyone else looking to share. Mr. Watkins, do you have what you need? Do you have any follow-up questions for us?
I think I have what we need. So we'll move forward from here. Just in a nutshell, 3 maps max, plus or minus 5%. But Mayor Cawley, you were talking about 2 maps plus or minus 5% and 1 close to average. Is that, which direction would council prefer? Just a clarification on that.
Isn't one map close to average the same as within 5%?
No, the close to average
Well,
is a little bit finer.
Yes, I would work to get as close as possible to the 7,400 in each of the districts. It's the 5% is a little more flexible, and it is a little nuanced, but it is slightly different. But I'll prepare whatever maps council wishes.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
So I'm okay with 3 at 5%, only because the closest average is so tight. We're talking, like 35 people? So I think the 5% is, I think that would be, 3 at that would be just fine.
Okay. Councilmember Rabati.
I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Okay, sounds like 3 at 5% would meet our needs, Mr. Watkins.
Okay, thank you.
And plus or minus. It's plus or minus 5%.
Plus or minus 5%, right?
It's plus or minus, yes.
And what was your interpretation of where we came down on the goal to keep council members in current district?
It was to, if it worked out, then yes. If it didn't, then it wasn't a hard line. That's how I'm interpreting it. But it appears that it will, that all the existing sitting council members will fall into the districts, but I haven't, again, dove into it yet.
Okay, so it sounds like from lack of direction that might not happen. Just so we're all clear, he didn't say that he's going to keep them in the same district. He said if that works out. So that's the same as saying he's not doing that necessarily. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
So I just want to push back just a little bit. I thought I heard 4 people say to keep council members in their district.
That's why I was confirming with him what he heard and what he's going forward with. Town Manager.
I will move forward with keeping.
Go ahead, Mr. Watkins.
No, I will move forward with keeping the existing council members in their current district.
Okay. Is that okay with council? I'm looking for head nods. I'm seeing head nods, so we have mostly consensus on that. If anyone wants to speak up, please do. Councilmember Garamella.
Yeah, I meant to say, I don't want to, again, create a new map, but technically, to be fair, we should not look at it, and I think the dimension of the map, it will fit in that the current council members will have their own district, but we should have a set rules because we're just biasing towards the existing town council members, I feel, because we got to be fair, let the staff decide and do the job. And I think Rodney did an excellent job. But putting that criteria unnecessary starts changing the stuff and starts screwing some of the maps. So which last time the maps were well recognized, not just by Morrisville, but all across the state. And there were several articles that they really liked the maps.
Thank you for sharing. That's why we're here, to make decisions like that. And okay. So I think you still have that direction. Anything else from staff? Okay. Mr. Watkins, thank you very much. Next steps.
Thank you.
Could you go over next steps one last time for us?
Well, next steps, and I will generate a timeline. Okay. And is this something that Town Manager Page, we want to formalize at a council meeting in a resolution, the timeline? And I guess one clarification, is do we want to incorporate public input, opportunities for public input, and what that looks like, which could ebb and flow based on the COVID situation, but I would like some direction from council on the public input piece.
Okay, excellent.
And if I've got a suggestion for that. I think council wants to see draft maps first, and then once you've looked at the ones that you may have a preference on, that is what you might want to put before the public. If you are not in consensus on a map, you don't want to confuse the public, or are you giving the public the pick one kind of option? I think that's what you might need to discuss. I think you've given Rodney some information that he could start his work. He and I can talk offline to see how much time he needs to do that. We would need to find time to bring this back to you to discuss anyways. This may be one of those March 26 topics, if that gives Rodney enough time to determine how you want to put public input, if at all. That is not, again, a requirement. It's something that you can choose to do. And I think council has done it both ways in the past.
Okay. If that's acceptable to everybody, I know it's very helpful to me, and I think some other council members, to have things to react to in regards to public engagement options. If when you bring it back, if you have any thoughts about how best to do that, what staff would recommend in a timeline. Because I think we do have a good deal of time on this item. So thank you for staff for getting it front-loading this. Councilmember Garamella, did you have any other comments? I see your thing up. Okay. Well, excellent. Mr. Watkins, thank you very much for the work you've already done and the work you're going to do. I know it's a big puzzle in Morrisville, all those different census blocks, and you'll do your best to bring forth some really good maps for us. So thank you, sir.
Yes, you're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you, Rodney.
Thank you.
We're scheduled for another break. Do we want to power through, or would we like to take another 10 minutes? Looking for thumbs up to power through, or take a break?
30 minutes.
Okay. Yep. Ideally, we'll see how it goes. We're going to go through.
And this is also 1 hour, right?
Okay. Martha Page, Town Manager, and Lori Shedlich, Human Resources Director, will facilitate our final discussion tonight. Town Manager.
Thank you, and I appreciate council's consideration that you got this information yesterday. I tried to set the stage that there's a lot of information in here that we're not going to go over. We did want to give you an overview of the NSHIP pool that we joined in 2019 and really sort of a primer on how it works. And both Lori and I are happy to answer any questions, but we tried to take a lot of complicated information and synthesize it into how we manage our health insurance. The pool allows us to really be self-insured and in control of our own plan design, as well as some structure of our premiums. It's also really accomplished what we went into the pool for the first place, which was to stabilize our annual renewal rates, which fluctuated widely based on our annual experience. And that always hindered our ability to share timely information with our employees heading into annual enrollment and for our budgeting purposes. So it really has accomplished our goals. What we want to discuss with you tonight is our upcoming renewal, which is fast approaching, and I do mean fast. And I'm just going to call out a few important notes to facilitate our discussion. Lori's got a microphone and is going to jump in if she has anything to add or that I've missed. So I'm going to take you right to page 9 or slide 9. And this is really the synthesis of how it works is we have members, they select a coverage type option. There is a rate established with that. That is what we pay in monthly. And then our actual claims experience gets charged against those deposits that we're making. The goal is to have made more deposits than our claims, and that would help us build up our reserve. A unique factor of the pool and how it stabilizes our cost is that shared layer, where if claims by an individual claimant are over $40,000, all the pool members share and they smooth out those costs. In some years, we get assessed some additional premiums. In some years, we get some of our premiums forgiven. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. We do have insurance in place for claims that are over $200,000 where there's a reimbursement. Going to the next slide, I've mentioned this. It's really for our premiums to be more than our actual costs, and this builds our reserve for future claims and coverage against our renewals. Going to slide 12. Again, mostly information just to provide you with some general information about our population base that's covered. Just a quick note, we cover our current employees, three-quarter employees, council members, retirees, and anybody that is COBRA eligible that chooses that election. So we have an average of 198 enrolled members, and with families and dependents, et cetera, we're covering 350 lives. We have 7 retirees right now on our plan, no COBRA members. Let's go to page 14. This is a distribution of how our members select their plans. We have the 2 types of plans, the base and the buy-up. The buy-up is what we would describe as richer, is more is covered on behalf of the covered member than on the base plan, but it costs more. Then there's various levels of coverage, employees, family, et cetera, as you see here. Going to page 15. These are our current premium and employee contributions, and they've been the same since we've been under NSHIP. The wellness fee has been effective for us. Most of our members are covered under the wellness incentive. These monthly fees for employees come out twice a month in their employee paychecks. And retirees are billed for their portion of their premium. Again, that's based on a formula that we have in our personnel policies for how much of their health care insurance we cover. So then I would like to go to page 17, and this is where we'll spend a little bit more time. This is sort of the meat and potatoes of how our plan has, I'll say, performed. So our loss ratio, the goal, again, is to have some left over, so your losses should be less than what you put in. And I will say 95.6 is good, and 101 is not good. That means our claims have been more than the premiums that we collect. And then that number of 107.4 was really what we incurred before those claims that we shared with our pool members were diluted for us in this particular year. I'll come back and talk about that a little bit as well. We mentioned earlier in our budget preview that our pharmacy spend is high. It is for the pool. It's something that we talk about at our monthly meetings every month. And for fiscal year 22, it is going up. And so we're paying attention to that, and we've talked a little bit about that. A very interesting note is our contract size. We cover more people per member than the pool average, and in fact, everybody else in the pool. We have the highest number of covered lives in the entire population of 20 members. And then this IBNR stands for incurred but not reported, and that's if you go to the doctor in February, sometimes that bill's not coming till March or April or May, and that's what that reserve is supposed to be for. There is a policy that exists that we need to get that up to 3 times our monthly claims, Lori, within a certain period of time. And we are actually in a deficit position right now. We have not only no reserve, we have less than no reserve. So that is a factor that we're looking at as we look at our premium structure. Going to let's see, what's the next page that we wanted to talk about? Again, some of this is just information for you to look at. We've talked again a little bit about our high cost claims. I will say that is why people have insurance. That happens. People get sick. Accidents happen. It's just something, it's not a fault. It's just something that happens and that we have to prepare for, and why that banded layer matters so much to us. So we are looking at those high cost claims. I'm sorry, looking at page 20. Last year, we had 14 high-cost claims. We've shown you the breakdown of what they are, as well as our high-cost claims in the 2 prior years, giving you an example of what some of those high-cost claim diagnoses can be. We talk a lot about comorbidities, and if you turn to the next slide, this list will not surprise you. Those percentages actually show the percentage of our employee population base that deal with that particular type of comorbidity, and why our wellness focus is just so important to make sure that we're looking at that disease management and helping deal with those types of issues.
Martha?
Yes, ma'am.
If you go back to the previous slide where
Sure.
it said...
Is that page 20?
Where it says 14 covered lived.
Lives, I'm sorry. Lives.
All right.
Typo.
Okay.
But yes, they did all live.
I just was wondering, like, did other people die?
No, I'm sorry. That's just my typo.
That's my bad. Sorry.
All right. Going on to page 22, and we've also, I'm sorry, Lori says go back to page 19. Oh, yeah. Very important, because this is one of the 2 items that we really felt we needed to talk with you about. So our membership breakdown is 57% employees, 11 spouse, and 32% dependent. Our costs are coming, and I'll just go right to the notable one, 33% of our costs are coming from spouses rather than our employees and our dependents. And as we've talked to our brokers and our representatives, low dependent cost is not unusual, but this high level of spouse cost is part of what's driving the cost of our plan. And when the plan is affordable for spouses, there's just more risk for us about those fluctuations. Anything else, Lori, that I missed? Okay, thank you. So going back now to 22, this is our pharmacy costs. Mentioned they're going up. Just trying to illustrate, this is the top 10 in our employee population and how much a script costs. So we're paying these costs other than what the employee is paying as their share of that. and recognizing often if you've got a health condition, you may take more than one prescription. Generics are not always available for these drugs. And in this particular case for 2021, these top 10 drugs accounted for $500,000 of our pharmacy cost. So this is just illustrating why we pay attention to this. And then going to page 24, this is just really high-level overview of our budget and our actual costs. Candidly, difficult to interpret because the total costs recognize what we did actually pay. The budget is based on and our actual a different amount because our employees make contributions towards some of those health care plans. But this is a perspective of how much of our budget just our medical costs are. Dental is another thing that we pay for. That's another $150,000 of cost to the town a year to provide the dental insurance for our employees, and that's under a separate plan. Recognize there's a lot of fluctuation here. New positions change those numbers, vacancies change those numbers. When people change their plan elections, it changes those numbers, and that's why they sort of fluctuate up and down. Going on to page 25, we talked about this banded layer, and in the last 3 years, there have been 2 of those years where we have benefited from sharing our high-cost claims with other members of the pool. So they have diluted our cost. And then in 20, we shared with some others, and you can see a much more nominal amount compared to what has been shared with us. It's also just another perspective of the volatility of healthcare costs and why that stabilization has really helped us. Next page, we have kept our renewal, thank you, at 5% each year, just again showing you our loss ratio and then our reserve balance. That number is what we have. It's a similar conversation as fund balance. That's a measurement at the end of the plan year. And I think we mentioned we had our first renewal meeting on Friday morning last week. We have a 5% renewal proposed again, and I've made that note that it can be lower. So now let's go to the conversation that we really need to have. Again, I mentioned people get sick, and this is how we stratify all the things that we look at in our health care plans. We need to look at those high-cost claims, care gaps, making sure that we're addressing the medical and health needs that our employee population has and try to close those gaps, and then continue to recognize what wellness and healthy favors are, in particular those items that we listed as comorbidities and how to reduce those types of risk. Going on to the next page, page 29. Here is where we are. We have been classified as an encourager in the way our plan design is structured and what we ask of our employees. I mentioned that the plan itself, other than minor plan design modifications each year, has really stayed the same and the same cost for our employees, even as the cost to the town has increased. We have maintained those employee contributions rate as a part of just our overall total compensation strategy. What we are hearing is to motivate people more to pay attention to their health care benefits, we may need to look at some of our premium structures. So that is really one of the things that we want to get some input from council on, is any thoughts and feedback you have regarding the contributions we request from the people that we cover. We do plan to continue our wellness strategy, but are going to probably shift a little bit of focus to really disease management versus just something like knowing your biometrics. It's really trying to make sure that if you've got a condition, that it's being paid attention to. And then really focusing on benefits of how to use the plan, how we use the plan. We did provide some information I didn't go over about something as simple as don't go to the emergency room for this type of thing because it costs you and the town more than some other kind of approach. Always want you to go to the emergency room if you need it, but is that the right thing to do? We want to look at a couple plan design changes really related to our pharmacy and encourage people to really look at generics if they are available, and that the premium structure would modify. Those are pretty simple things. It's really the premiums that we want to hear from you, and the other issue we really see is that spousal coverage. And we've listed 3 options, and I think we've really probably identified that there's 5 options. One is not to do anything, just leave it as it is. We know how it is, and we're willing to do that. We could eliminate the coverage type so that it would force employees with spouses to cover family coverage. I don't think that's one we're recommending. I'll go to the spousal incentive as well, which is you provide some kind of incentive so that people would not choose to cover their spouse. Also, don't think we're recommending that because it just opens up for people that don't already cover their spouses and having to be equitable and providing those incentives. But the spousal exclusion, if a employed spouse has access to a health care plan, that they would not be eligible for ours is I won't call it a best practice, but it is a strategy that people use. If our plan is better, we may be ensuring spouses that do have access to insurance. We're not trying to not have people not have insurance. And then what was the 5th one that we talked about, Lori? Really just increasing the premium. It was dramatically, perhaps is not the best word, but increasing the premium to recover some of that share of cost. So I'm going to pause. Lori, did I miss anything really important that you wanted to mention? Lori and her staff follow this on a regular basis. These were the things that we thought we at least wanted to hear from you as we need to make recommendations for our plan. I did mention we are expected to provide our plan renewal by March 1st. And again, staff is prepared to do this, but really thought that those 2 topics were things that we really wanted to hear from council on.
Okay. Does anyone feel like jumping in and talking about each of those 3? I'll recognize Councilmember Rabati, followed by Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson, please.
So I think that moving from encourager to motivator is a solid strategy. I can see that being a way to reduce costs. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you guys not hear me? I feel like I'm talking so loud. I said moving from encourager to motivator to me is a solid strategy, and I think that there are small gains that you can make in that area that result in better health for employees and less claims. So I definitely think that's a good strategy. I don't love the spousal exclusion. I mean, I understand if we have to do it, then I guess we can bite the bullet. But I think that, I don't know, I think that turns into a hardship at some point, because a lot of times when you're covering your spouse on your plan rather than some cobbled together plan that, that their work is proposing, it's because, the deductible is so high that the coverage is meaningless, or the benefits are terrible, or the network is small. So I don't know, I would like that to be a last resort.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson, followed by Councilmember Garamella.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me? I do like the move from encourager to motivator strategy. I think that we have to not only address the employees, but due to the fact that you've shown some statistics, we should extend that motivation to the spouses as an option. There is great benefit from a spouse understanding the disease that they may have, and that may pay off benefits to the overall pool of policy holders. So there's a way to use this as a carrot versus a stick. I'm very sensitive that benefits are one of the retention tools that we use to keep our staff. We have a lot of turnover in the region because of various salaries and so forth. But as we consider raising benefit costs, we've also already raised salaries somewhat. We don't want to completely dissolve the benefit of having a new salary, and then all of a sudden the medical cost wipes that completely out. So I like using good behaviors as a way of encouraging. I do not support the spousal exclusion, because that would not probably be received in a positive way, and it might go against retention. We want to make sure that we're looking at this not just as a monetary, but also just to keep our talent. The plan design changes, I wasn't really clear on adding a specialty copay. I thought there already is a fee structure such that specialty specialists have a higher copay in network than non-specialty. Is there
So
some more
Lori and I may
information?
need to tag team this one. And we even today just affirmed our understanding of what this is. So there is a drug out there that is expensive. And if you watch TV enough, you often see pharmacy commercials where at the end they'll say something like, the drug company may be able to help you with the cost of this drug, especially high-cost drugs. And so what has happened in the industry is, in order probably, again, to induce you to want to take their drug perhaps versus something, they offer coupons. And the practical way things are working under our current plan is, if your copay for that drug is $75, you're going to pay $75 and the town's going to pay the rest. But that coupon may be worth $1,000. So this mechanism, which is sort of a no-brainer kind of thing, is now the employee wouldn't have to pay, in fact, probably wouldn't even have to pay that $75 because there's this coupon, but the coupon now will give the employer credit for $1,000, not just the $75.
Oh, that's kind of nice.
So it's all behind the scenes, and we really had to verify, because
Sounds
this
good.
couponing has become more prevalent, and we have to turn some things in on our plan design to make it work that way. No real effect to an employee. We incur additional savings for some of those high-cost scripts.
So there would be education around that as well. Yeah.
and no effect to an employee except potentially positive. So let's say today they're paying $75, they could pay $0 in the town. So it's a win-win really for both the employee and the town in that case.
And we are recommending, I'll call it modest, other prescription copays that should prompt a person to think about whether they want to consider a generic. That will help us with that avenue of healthcare savings.
That's very helpful. I like the specialty copay then. That makes a lot of sense for the town as well as the patient and our employees. Evaluate the emergency room copay. I believe that's $300 right now. Is that something that would rise in cost perhaps?
Yes, right now that one, if you're on the base plan, your initial visit is $150. If you use it at another time, it's $450 from then on. If you're on the base plan, it's $300 right now for that emergency room visit. So we're looking at ways to make some changes to that might encourage appropriate use of that, as Martha mentioned, certainly if you need it for those emergency situations, but not using it when an urgent care or a physician visit would do. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And I just would like to say before I close is that it's interesting to see the trends. It was very helpful for me. A lot of individuals possibly have postponed wellness care or disease care due to the pandemic, and we're starting to see that fallout in the 2021 numbers because of postponement. So hopefully with better education, we would see some of that come down as people are now seeing their proper medical, care. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Garamella, followed by Councilmember Rao, please.
Yeah, I'm okay with the encourager to motivation, and I think the plan design changes, no questions. In regards to spousal exclusion, I think we got to be cognizant our employee setup, right? Like I think combination of our first responders, police and fire, almost contribute to 50% or more than that. And I know their salaries are not higher. And especially, during the pandemic, they have worked. Like at AT&T, we used to have, if your spouse worked, then, and you still want to have your insurance from, then there is a higher, there's a monthly cost that is charged. That was what was done. Like, suppose my wife has insurance from Cisco and she opts to come on the AT&T one, then to have that, I had to pay $60 or $70 per month to have that plan because she had an option to take that, but she opted to come to this one. So that's done it's predominantly, that's the standard that I've seen that. So I don't know if something you guys can look into it, because exclusion is not the right way, because they're a part and parcel of who they are, to keep our employees coming back, and their wellness is our wellness in every respect. So that is something,
So almost, I'm sorry to interrupt, like a premium that you have to pay.
Yes.
Charge maybe.
Yeah. Okay. We can ask our broker about that.
And also, like, if you're a smoker, then there's a premium for that too. So those ones basically, obviously, keeps you that thing, and so that way is one place that you can try to get that, because our coverages are good. So I know it is expensive, but at the same time, a different way where it's an option that they are choosing to come to this plan would be something to think for. That's all.
Councilmember Rao, followed by Councilmember Fender, please.
Excuse me. Just some observations. I mean, I really like this idea of encourager to motivator, and I'd be really curious as to what the town can continue to do to really focus on a healthcare strategy that's more preventive in nature. I once heard Dale Falwell, the treasurer, state that just in the state health plan, 80% of the cost is coming from 20% of the population that's covered by the health plan. And so when Martha put up that slide of the comorbidities, to me, I think that just really, it's not something we don't already know, but, reducing, cardiovascular through exercise, diet, all these things could help reduce that amount within our population, which could then, reduce cost. It's always hard to show where those cost savings are over time, but that's one observation. The other thing is I've been researching this during COVID, and there's been a lot of focus during the pandemic on COVID deaths, but there, if you look at the data, they have science and studies that have shown that comorbidities actually, will make people more prone to getting these kinds of infections. So you actually could even reduce, long haul COVID and things like that by doing that, right? And then the third thing, which is interesting, is I've actually come across some companies that, they've had a lot of success in manufacturing with self-insured companies where offering like options for like surgical procedures, where if you didn't want to do it here, they actually have models where you could go to Costa Rica or other places, which I always thought to be like, wow, why would you want to do that? But apparently they're actually able to do procedures at 80% of the cost. So something like that, I think, as an option out there, because what's driving all of this, and I think Martha hit it on the nail, is the cost. The way I look at it, our healthcare system is really in America a test and treat system still, where you test, you find out you have a problem, and you treat. And it's not so much a focus on the preventive side. And while and the cost just keeps going up. So the drug prices, if you look at insulin, for example, I mean, President Biden was talking, I think, in the Build Back Better about reducing the cost of insulin, right? Or reducing the out-of-pocket expense. But, and these are just observations, right? I mean, it's such a complicated system. And so my question to Lori, I guess my question would be, how do we quantify when we say encourage to motivator? What are the metrics that we would put in place so that over time we could see what are the things that we have to do so that we could, show that reducing the amount of high-cost claimants? Or is it just so hard to do? Because I hear all these things, and then it's hard to find a slide that says, well, show me if we paid this much in preventive and we reduced cardiovascular or hypertension or whatever by this amount, how much money would that equivocate to, right?
Yeah, so it is hard. It would be a number of different factors. It would be related to our wellness program, and I think Martha mentioned directed coaching. That would be, to certain diagnoses, so that we're more targeting that and involving those employees more directly rather than kind of the broad-based approach that we've taken to participation in wellness. So that would be one thing. Then looking at if we are trying to drive more, so based on what are our goals, if we're trying to drive more of our employees to the base plan, for example, that's measurable. Do we do that based on some of the other levers and other plan design options that we choose, maybe increasing some to that spousal coverage? Does that then make the base plan, for example, something more enticing? And so depending on what our goals are, we can set up the metrics to assess that to a certain extent.
Lori's 100% correct, and we get these utilization reports, and we're looking at our trends and where we're at a norm. And over time, we have to look at those. You don't want to just jump to the last one. You have to look for that sustained difference. One of the bigger ways to motivate is for people to pay more for their health insurance. That's where that employee contribution adjustment and designing that, which is why we have our assistants and the broker that will help us, is the structure of those premiums between the base and the buy-up will also hopefully cultivate the types of behaviors we want in paying attention to your own coverage costs.
No, thank you so much. I mean, this is
Yeah, and I think it's really important, and Lori will probably, be really pleased I said this. I'm surprised she hasn't said it herself before. We, not Lori, not me, not any of her staff, have access to anybody's personal health information, and we are not the ones that know this person has this and they need case management for that. That's what the health insurance does. And they're doing the outreach and the communicating that we want to help you with this. What we know is whether people choose to engage or not. And many people don't choose to engage. So that's just also part of what we're looking at. Lori, any add there?
No, I think, but Blue Cross as our administrator, that is their role. So we're not in HR looking at a claim by claim, basis. This is what they do. And so if we say we want more directed coaching and more reaching out and how we do that, we can ask for that, and then they actually would implement that directly with the employee or the participant directly. So we're not doing that and looking at that claims data and then doing that. So that's what they provide, that outreach, as Martha said, as our administrator.
Councilmember Rao, are you done addressing those items?
Yeah, I mean, I just brought up, it's a very complicated system, but I like some of these new ideas, and I think whatever we can do to be proactive and just try to really focus what we can be unique in our preventive strategy, I think would help us long term. But it's not just our problem, it's all across the country. Every city, every county is dealing with rising costs.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Fender, followed by myself.
Yeah, I have specific questions because I just want to make sure I understand. So, you said, right, I guess there's a plan now where it's a wellness incentive. So what is that? What is the incentive now?
So right now, for our wellness, we have a voluntary wellness program, and if employees, they can choose to participate or not. If they choose not to, then they're assessed a $20 fee twice a month throughout that year. Once they are assessed, it begins in January, because we start the program at the start of the fiscal year, and they need to do a preventive screening, complete an online health risk assessment, and then do their biometrics on site. Those are the 3 items right now. And if they do those, then they're not assessed that fee come January.
Okay. And if they choose to cover their spouse, does the spouse have to meet those incentives?
No, we only require the employees.
Well, so is that one of the things you may change?
We haven't looked at that for the wellness. We've looked at some other things, but not yet with the spouse, only because it's a little more difficult. We have sort of less control. We do offer a lot on site for our employees that they can do. And so we haven't gone, it's not that we can't, but we haven't gone that route yet in terms of the spouses.
Yeah, okay. Because I know at my company, most all of us are remote, and we have they did something similar where it was an encourager. And now you have to meet a certain blood pressure to get $50 off. And then you have to have a certain, your heartbeat rate, to get another $50 off. And I'm able to do that remotely. So I think if the spouses are the greatest cost, then they should be having to have a wellness program as well. But I like the idea of moving to a motivator model. And then just a couple of questions I want to understand. So for the ER copay, do you differentiate between the ER and the urgent care?
Yes.
Okay. And then, I think you said this, but I missed it. So what are you planning to do, or what are you changing as far as coverage of a prescription if there's a generic available?
Yes, currently we are, and that's, I think, through our STEP program, that if a generic is available, then that is what is first, unless there is a script written by the physician specific to a brand name. They're initially default driven to the generic is the default.
Does the coverage change?
The cost share that the employee pays for the script changes.
Right,
Okay.
is less.
And so are you going to change anything about that coverage? Or are you looking at changing anything about
I don't know that it's so much looking at changing it. We had looked at the higher tier, the tier 5, and looking at that, because right now that is a minimum $50 and a maximum $150, and we have discussed whether, on the high end, if we need to adjust that. So we have talked about that.
Okay.
Nothing yet, but those are some of the things we've talked about.
All right. That's all I had. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, going from top to bottom, I like the encourager, switching that to motivator. Education is important. At first, I wasn't a big fan of the employee contribution adjustment, but it is insurance, so that needs to change in order to cover our costs a little bit. I think people would understand that. And then jumping to the bottom, not a big fan of the special exclusion. Even if they have access to their own plan, I would like to have an incentive, though, if they have access to another plan, maybe have some incentive about that, carrot or stick, I think would be helpful. In the different contribution types, I think that people would understand if we changed the amount for spousal contributions, since that is a higher part of the plan. People understand that when claims go up, the insurance goes up appropriately. So I think that would not get too much pushback. I mean, no one wants to pay more, but if that's where most of our costs are, I think people would understand that spousal coverage is going to cost a little bit more because of that, because then it's fair for everyone that way. I'm a big fan of the couponing thing that you talked about, especially if it has no real effect and it can only benefit the claimants. And in general, I see this insurance coverage as a really important part of the compensation, especially for families. So I don't want to make it a disincentive and have people think that, as was noted, that their raises are being absorbed into these costs and that they don't really have more money in their pocket. And that's what I want to share about that. So thank you very much for bringing this forward, and lots of good options there, and you guys are already exploring some best practices. We appreciate that. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
So first, I'm going to say I'm a little sensitive to raising the cost for our employees. Out-of-pocket cost. I thought we took the position that we were changing this because of feedback we got from our employees and how expensive our insurance was to them and to their families. So I'm really sensitive now to the fact that we're going to talk about raising their monthly contribution, whoever it is. So, and even some of these other options that you have up here, evaluating emergency room copay and all that. So I just want to say that at the board. I'm really sensitive to that because of the efforts that we made. So having said all that, explain to me, I was a little surprised why we had so many people on the buy-up plan. Why are you as surprised as well? Why aren't more people on the base plan? Because we have such a young a young employment staff too, that I'm a little confused about that, and I was kind of stuck on that page. So, and I know you just talked a little bit about moving people from the buy-up plan to the base plan and how to do that. And I'm okay with that, but I'd like to, I don't know what if you have any feedback you can share on that.
I mean, I would say in general that yes, we have retained, we have driven a good amount, I would say, to that. But an indicator could say, when you look at those premiums, and that's why we are looking at them, the premiums in relation to the benefit and the richness of our plan is potentially why they're staying on it. Low deductibles, you know, that buy-up plan, you get a lot for potentially right now employee only $25. So that's what we're trying to weigh is, do we need to look at that and get that, tweak that, and look at that being a little more in line for what you're getting for that. And then that may either you're paying a little more to have those lower deductibles and lower co-pays, or you decide, you know what, I'll go to the base plan where I can pay a little less out of pocket, and that's going to still meet my needs. But yeah, but I agree. We want to be careful. We don't want to be driving someone there that's not considering that deductible and knowing they're going to potentially, if they need to use it, you're going to be paying more for that. But if not, and then you still have that benefit of maybe a little higher, but it still comes out better for you or a little closer to that. So those are some of the reasons why we're looking at, are the premiums still in line with what you're getting? Because we have kept them the same throughout the entire time so far of NCHIP, and that's going into year 4 of premiums staying the same.
And if I could add, you are 100% correct, and we worked really hard to, I'll say, calibrate, especially the family coverage. That's where we were really struggling with our employees and the comparisons, and we worked really hard at that. I think we're in another calibration stage. We're not talking about massive changes in contributions. And this is a continuum. We look at these things every year. We're not talking about radical changes one year, but that motivating behavior is to create people thinking about it a little bit more at the time of enrollment and when they're using the plan.
Well, so that goes to my point about education too. I mean, this stuff is really complicated. And when you start, some people, and I'll include myself, some people, you look at it, you say, you know what, this is too much. I'm just going with this plan because it'll cover everything and I'm good. Whereas you may not have to even pay that out of pocket to be in that plan because you're a healthy individual with healthy family members. You really should be in this other plan. It makes more financial sense for you, but yet it's complex. So I think that's where we need to, as an organization, help our employees understand and pick the plan that really is best for them. And if that buy-up plan is the best because they have so many issues or whatever, then that's why we have 2 plans. That's for you. But for the rest, that's why, again, I was really surprised to see the 61% there, but that was so much like our old plan. Maybe it was easy to just stay there. So anyhow, they're just my 2 thoughts on that. Maybe there's more to this than just, and maybe it is a little tweaking, adjusting. I'm good with that, but wholesale kind of huge expense. I'm gonna be a little, not a little. I'm gonna be very reticent to do any of that. And this goes back to Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson's comments early on, that this is a tool for retaining and attracting the best, and I think I see it that way. So again, very sensitive to how much we change here for our employees. So I'm good with all the, obviously all the recommendations that of no cost to our employees. Obviously, I think that's great. The others, I think I'd want to see what you're talking about and what it means. And then the last comment I'm going to make, you're right, you do have to look at this every year because today it might be the spouses that are causing our expense. Tomorrow it's going to be the kids, or next year it's going to be the actual employees. So all of this does change over time. So if we're going to make some wholesale changes, I think we got to remember that so that's why I don't like the other options where we're eliminating spouses, or that might be the issue today, but that might not be the issue tomorrow. So I don't want to
Yeah, our spouse issue has been every year of the plan. It's continued. Again, we are looking at that year over year and not making arbitrary decisions based on the 1 year.
Okay.
And again, we are not talking about wholesale. That doesn't help us making wholesale changes. We are talking to motivate the employees. They have to pay more somewhere.
Okay, and then the last comment I'm going to make is we have been in this plan now for a couple of years. How are we doing based on where we were before we went into this program? And have we looked at moving, because we talked about this before, or when we went into this NCHIP program, we talked about the fact that we could easily move out of this program and go to another provider if we needed to, or another pool if we needed to. And so I'd like to know, have we looked at other options as well? And if not, why not? And if not, this year, I thought we talked about making sure we did look again in the future to make sure that we had a competitive program for our employees.
So I know Lori gets comparison renewals for what we would be if we were fully insured. So I'll let her talk about that. I did get an invitation this year from somebody starting another pool and listen to that. And it did not have the same benefits to the town. And it's just getting started, just like NCHIP was 3 or 4 years. I think a testament to our pool is 4 years ago, there were 7 members, and there are 20 now. And again, that helps us more and more. The more people that are covered in this pool, the more it smooths out those claims in that 40 to 2,000. That's where we benefit with more covered lives to spread the costs over in that layer. So we do look at that every year. Do you want to talk about our comparisons to our fully insured renewal?
Yes, and so the part of the reason we went into NCHIP was for that stability and predictability year in and year out, also in a budgetable number. And so that has shown going into year 4. And as Martha said, right now we're at 5, which we've had each year. Potentially could be lower depending on some plan design options that we're looking at. As far as what it would have been fully insured, my recollection is, and I can verify this, was when we did a comparison, it was at an 8% versus where we were at the 5%, and then it was up into the teens for some of these a little tougher years that we have had we been fully insured. So we were looking more at potentially double digit versus at that 5% being able, again, it's part of that sharing when we have, because we are smaller, those ups and downs really hit. And having that banded layer that smooths you out, and it is unpredictable. Being small, you just don't know what's going to hit when. You could literally have 10 higher cost claims in 1 year and then have 1 or none the next. It is that variable for us, and we were having some difficulties with that. And actually, being in the plan, we've had some of the toughest years since we've joined NCHIP. That would have resulted in much higher increases than that 5%, just because of the claims that hit that were not predictable, that happen. That's just part of it. Just being in a smaller, having a smaller population base, those just really can move the needle for a renewal individually.
That's all I have.
All set? Okay, so everyone's gotten a chance, and hopefully staff got what they needed. If anyone has some final comments, now is the time. Councilmember Rabati?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think that it makes a difference that the cost between the base plan and the other plan is so close, the cost to the employee. because I know that Cisco does this thing every year, which is very helpful to me, where whenever they're changing insurance plans, or like we just went to a high deductible plan. And so they had people from HR do office hours where you could come and talk to them about what it was going to cost you, like what is my actual insurance coverage going to look like, what's it going to cost me month to month, and what's it going to cost me, what's my maximum going to be. And sure enough, it turns out that the high deductible plan for my family, the way we use our insurance, comes out way cheaper. That's not what I would have done left to my own devices without talking to anybody. I would have gone for the most expensive plan and, damn the torpedoes. So I do think that the level of employee education about what the different plans mean is really important. And I just wanted to share an anecdotal story about one of those company copay cards. Chuck takes Xarelto now from the COVID thing when he was in the hospital, and we went to fill the prescription, and it was $795. So we downloaded the GoodRx app, and it was $565. And then we went to Xarelto.com, downloaded a coupon, and it was $10, and cost our insurance nothing because we paid a $10 copay. So that's just one example of the kind of money you can save on prescription drugs. I don't know who's paying full price for that stuff.
The employer.
Thank you. Councilmember Rao?
Well, Ann said something that triggered a thought, and I've been to a few at Cisco many years ago, but maybe having a health fair. Some of these companies have health and wellness fairs where we could invite people in to come in and showcase wellness programs, fitness programs, that stuff, maybe once or twice a year. I've seen companies do this before the pandemic, and they did them on site, and it's a big event. It could be, maybe we can partner with someone. It's just an idea, anything to just bring awareness.
And I don't know if you were here. We used to do a health and benefit fair a number of years ago. You might remember, for all of our benefits, and we did that for a number of years. I want to say at least 5 years we did that, and with anything sort of dwindled off. So then we have gone more to the online. We've done over the years when we've had some major changes. We'll do one-on-ones. We'll do groups to go through that as well. We have, they call it the Brain Shark online that'll go over our benefits. We do meet individually. We've also had individual counselors that sit one-on-one with employees when we used to have the HRA reimbursement, because that was confusing to go over that. So we do that when we have major changes to go over with staff, and then we do also offer those informational sessions, because then also don't forget we have a whole slew of voluntary benefits. So this is confusing, but there's even more. So there's just a lot. We say the good thing is we have lots of benefits, and the confusing and difficult thing is sometimes we have lots of benefits. So it is definitely a continual education process. I totally agree. And it can get very confusing very fast. I totally agree with that and understand that.
And I guess there's a challenge because of privacy. You don't know who's doing what kind of claims, so you can't really direct them to which plan would be right. But if the Blue Cross Blue Shield people are able to do that for our employees, that might be helpful if we can use them as a resource.
And certainly if they share, sometimes with us as well, because we have the flexible spending accounts, that's a way to put aside some, save some tax, put away some tax-free dollars to then pay your medical. So we've done some education on that in the past as well, so they understand utilization of that and to increase some utilization. So there are also other mechanisms outside of directly the health plan that employees can utilize as well.
Okay.
Are these prescription costs per month or per year, or?
The ones
Per
we
year, I'll
listed
tell you that.
on in that presentation,
Yeah,
that's per script.
Yeah.
so that means for a 30-day supply?
Could be multiple, could be 90, could be, it varies, but yeah. So that could be multiple times that's refilled throughout the year.
Okay. Did staff feel like they got what they needed from us tonight, or any follow-up?
Yeah, we have to submit our plan design renewal by March 1st, and I think we clearly have the information we need to do that. The employee contributions can lag a little bit, and we'll work on that. But we do, and the last slide I think is next up. We move quickly into enrollment. It takes some time to get the paperwork together, and if we're making changes, yes, we launch those meetings with employees so that they are informed and engaged. So it moves quickly. I'd say we will definitely keep council informed and abide by what we've heard today, but we're going to keep moving just because we almost have to.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anything for the good of the order from staff before we entertain a motion to adjourn?
I would like to speak to council after we've adjourned for 1 minute.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. So at this point, I'm going to say thank you for watching this meeting of the Morrisville Town Council. We hope you plan to join us again. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is next Tuesday, the 22nd at 6 p.m. Please feel free to email your town council members at towncouncil@townofmorrisville.org or visit www.townofmorrisville.org/council for additional contact information. Is there a motion and second to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem. I have a second from Councilmember Rabati. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries unanimously. It is 8:57. We are adjourned. Thank you all.